Hello everyone, Sylvia here. Today we are getting a little bit more personal as I talk about my own personal struggles with anxiety. If you followed me for a while, it's not new to you that getting into cars is one of my biggest anxiety triggers and something that has affected my life for the past almost 10 years at this point. But just last month, at 28 years old, I was able to get my G2 license, which allows me to drive by myself. This is such a massive accomplishment for me. For the past 10 years, I honestly felt like this is something that would just never happen. I had kind of accepted in my life that I would be the girl that just Ubered everywhere or had to have her husband slash whoever partner drive her everywhere. I just kind of accepted that as my future. I could not even fathom getting over this anxiety trigger because it was so apparent in my day-to-day life. So when I shared my milestone with my followers on Instagram, I was surprised to see how many people could resonate with my anxiety around cars or driving. So many people messaged me that they were in the exact same position as me, where it's been years, they're in their mid to late 20s or early 30s, and still have not been able to get their driver's license because of this debilitating anxiety. And with so many people being able to relate, I thought that I would create a video about this so that if there's anyone else out there that is in a similar situation, that they know they are not alone and they can overcome it. So for me, my anxiety festers a lot in situations where I feel like I don't have control or I'm scared that I will lose control of a situation. Which is why I think being in vehicles and cars is such a trigger to me, because I am not the one controlling the situation. I think there's just so many variables that I can't control that I feel very, very anxious about it. Historically, every single time I would need to get into a car, there was not one time that I did not have some sort of anxiety or panic attack. Sometimes it was more mild, where I would just need to breathe and then go into the car. Other times it would take me like an hour to get into a car. And for the past few years of my life, I actually got to the point where I wasn't able to get into a car with anyone else but a very, very, very few selective people. So that was my fiance, but even then I would still get anxious about it. And there were some people that I could get into the car with sometimes if I feel like my anxiety was at bay that day. So I could get into a car with my best friend because she knows about my anxiety, but I would say only on the days that were my good days that I could be able to do that. So you could imagine how difficult it would be for me to get into a car with a driving tester when I can't even get into a car with my best friend. Honestly, it wasn't even the driving portion that made me anxious. Yes, I do have a little bit of anxiety when I'm driving now around by myself, because I still feel a little bit of that uncontrolledness because there's so many other factors around me. However, the biggest hurdle for me was getting over that trapped feeling when I am going to be in the car with the driving tester. I felt that once he gets in, I almost felt like I was trapped, completely trapped in that situation. And if I needed to get out of it, I couldn't. What am I supposed to do? Just tell him, what if we're driving down the road and then I was like, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack. I need to get out of the car. Pull over. The driver's gonna be like, what the fuck are you doing? In all my scenarios in my head, I was like, I am trapped in that car. If I have a panic attack, I cannot leave because I'm with a stranger in this car who's expecting me to drive. In Toronto, luckily, I was living downtown. I didn't really have to get into a car. I could walk and bike around for the most part, but there were still a lot of opportunities and instances that my anxiety took over and I wasn't able to do what I had to do. But then I moved to Ottawa late last year, and when you live in Ottawa, there is no way that you can get around without a car. It's not the same. So I guess in a sense, being in that situation almost made me face the reality of, hey, you kind of have to do this. And I think that it kicked my butt into gear about focusing my mind on what I could do to make this happen. So if you have anxiety, you know that your mind can be hyper-focused on something and then think out all the plans. And I think instead of my mind being hyper-focused on all the things that could go wrong when I was driving, it was more about hyper-focused on trying to figure out solutions and how I was gonna make this happen. And that's when it clicked to me that I just needed to change my mindset and my outlook on what I thought and what my feelings were whenever I thought about getting into a car. So over the course of about 6 months, I slowly convinced my own brain to basically not have a negative and anxious reaction when I thought of doing the driver's test. I would be very conscious with my thoughts. Whenever I thought about the test, I obviously would feel that anxious energy right away, but I would be conscious about it. I would be like, wait, okay, Sylvia, you're feeling this right now. You shouldn't feel this way, because really, you should see this driving test as an open door to freedom. You will not have to rely on your partner in getting you places. You will no longer have to be a burden to your partner and other people around you, because you trying to live your life while scheduling other people to drive you was a burden on other people. And it will finally release you from this looming cloud over your head that constantly feels like it's holding you back from being able to live your life the happiest and the best way you can. So every time I thought about it, I would immediately catch myself and remind me of these things. If it helps, I would encourage you to write that down in a book or on your phone and write down why you should be looking forward to this and why you should be excited for this, and remind yourself of these things every single time that you think about driving. I basically trained like the files in my brain to retrieve the positive files every single time I thought about driving, rather than reverting to the negative files right away. So instead of that knee-jerk reaction of negative, I wanted that knee-jerk reaction of positive. I just had to keep rewiring my brain into thinking that this is the very first thought. My initial thought will always be positive. And I know that some of you guys are thinking, oh yeah, I mean, I've been told all my life my anxiety is a mindset thing. Sure, it's easier said than done. And it is easier said than done, but if you don't take that step in slowly trying to get yourself there, then you're only gonna stay in that same spot that you are right now. You have to at least try and want to try. You have to want to try. I did this for 6 months. 6 months. It took me 6 months to get to the point where I would say that 90% of the time I was feeling some sort of neutral to let's just get this over with type of excitement towards driving, and not the holy fuck, I'm going through a downward spiral feeling when I thought of driving. Mindset was the #1 thing that helped me the most in getting myself there. But I think that paired with some more practical real life tactics helped as well. So throughout those 6 months when I was adjusting my mindset, I was practicing at least 4 to 5 times a week. Driving an hour at least 4 to 5 times a week. After my dad or my fiance would finish work, I'd make them go driving with me. We'd just drive around casually. So I practiced a lot, and it does get better with more practice. I think also the fact that like I had already booked my test and had something to work towards helped me kick my butt into gear and into actually getting something done. So I would say if you're still thinking about it, just to book it. Just try to book a spot so that at least you have like the timeline to work towards it, and it'll kick your butt into gear and get you some sense of urgency. Listen, at the end of the day, you can always cancel or reschedule, but at least it gives you some sort of tangible timeline. Another thing that I did that really helped, I got people to drive with me that I typically didn't drive with. So I practiced mostly with my dad and my fiance. They were the ones helping me practice everything. And then once I got to the point where I felt fairly confident, I had my brother come in, and my brother, I've never driven with him before, and I basically told them to treat me as if he's a driving instructor. So like when he came into the car, he didn't even like small talk me or anything. Like he was like intense, stone cold face. He would come into the car and be like, okay, I am your driving tester today. I'm going to give you instructions, and it'll always be enough time for you to do so. Let's go, back out. And I'd be like, I was shook, you know, just having that like different energy and different vibe helped, because my dad and my fiance's energy and vibe was very like forgiving, coddling me in a sense. Whereas my brother put on the vibe of like, if you fuck up, I'm gonna tell you you fucked up. By the end of it, every time I thought about my driving test, I was like, yes, freedom, let's do it. Like I was pumped up and just wanted to get it over with, because I was like, I'm gonna get this done. And even if in the slight chance that I fail, because I was pretty confident in my driving, even in the slightest chance that I fail, that's fine. I will just do it again, and I will know from the first time what I learned and bring it forward. So in my mind, I also prepared myself for failure and the option of failure, and allowed that to be an option without disappointing myself. Because once you look at all your options and you get yourself to be okay with all the possible outcomes, then you don't need to stress about it, because you've already convinced yourself that all outcomes will be fine. So all in all, it's not like my anxiety has suddenly disappeared. I definitely still get anxious feelings about getting into a car. I am still not down to really get into a car with people that I'm not really close with. One huge thing for me is that at least I can drive myself. And I think that gives me a lot more control over my situation because I feel like I can do what I need to do for myself. Whereas previously, if my friends want to go out and I just wasn't feeling good about my anxiety that day, that would typically mean that I would bail on my friends because I wasn't down to get into the car with them for them to drive me somewhere. But at least now, those situations won't really happen as often to me. It brings peace to my anxiety knowing that I can drive myself there, so I don't have to worry about getting into a car with someone else, and I can leave whenever I want. If I feel uncomfortable, if I feel like I have an anxiety attack, I can just leave. I have the option to leave the situation, whereas previously I would have to like bother my friend to like leave with me or just feel trapped because I felt like I couldn't leave the situation on my own. So my anxiety hasn't cleared up completely, but there are a lot of triggers of my anxiety that are now in a more resolved place or wouldn't trigger me as much. So I think that's all I have to say about this. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below or DM me on Instagram. I am so happy to talk to you guys and walk you through anything because I know how it feels and I know what it's like. And I know how painful and shameful it can feel at times. I hope someone out there found this video useful, and I will talk to you guys again next time.